Friends, we are celebrating the birth of Christ, and I just want to tell you that Jesus had time and a space, first century, during the time when Caesar ruled and he had big territory. In fact, in Israel, he ruled through Herods. And I just want to tell you, we must have this question the Jesus I never knew. In order to recognize Jesus, in order to know the real Jesus, that has to happen. So, just want to tell you a few verses from the book of Luke, the Bible, and the 6, 7, and then 12 verses. I'm just going to read them out and I'm going to present my understanding. 6 verse says, while they were there in the time came for her baby to be born. 7. She gave birth to her first son, and first son she wrapped him snugly in strips of cloth and laid him in a manger, because there was no room for them in the village. Now the 12th verse says, and this is how you will recognize him. You will find a baby laying in a manger, wrapped snugly in strips of cloth. And who's saying this? This is angels speaking about Jesus Christ. This is how you will recognize him. You will find a baby laying in a manger, wrapped snugly in strips of cloth. Many a times what happens, we are portrayed, and the world and the people have portrayed a different picture. Jesus all powerful, or maybe Jesus meek, or weak Jesus, or a Jesus with miracles. Of course, these are reflections and dimensions of his human life on this globe. In fact, the divine possibility also. But the call has to happen. The Jesus I never knew. This desire, this question has to be constructed within us across the globe. I'm talking about different individuals. All individuals must have this question in their mind in order to figure out, in order to learn, in order to know the Jesus who is real Jesus. Isn't it? So that has to happen, and understand Jesus Christ is more closer to poor people, is more closer to those who are broken hearted people, and he's more, just next to those who are struggling, those who have no hope. And Jesus is more about love. Jesus is more about reaching out. He reaches people out. Jesus has unconditional love. This is how he is. What do we think about Christmas? It's not just an event, it is not just a festival, it is much more than that. It is the birth of a person, of a God who changed the entire history and who can change our lives too. This is what we need to understand. So this question has to happen. The Jesus I never knew, this has to be in our mind. And I want to just tell you, the Christ is not about Christianity merely. The Christ is not about Christianity only. The Christ is about humanity, the entire humanity. This birth of Jesus Christ has to take place in each and every person's mind. The birth has to happen right in the mind of ours. Internal birth has to happen. Then we can recognize Christ. And these words are very important in these verses. She wrapped him snugly in strips of cloth and laid him in a manger. And then angels also say, this is how you will recognize him. You'll find a baby laying in a manger. Magi talking about. Wrapped snugly in strips of cloth. This is a reflection, I guess, of poverty. The baby had to be wrapped in the baby had to be wrapped snugly in strips of cloth. I think many of us can relate how we wrap snugly baby, in strips of cloth. So equally, Jesus was wrapped snugly in strips of cloth. This tells about the very economic incapacity of human beings. Being a God, the owner of this world, was wrapped snugly in strips of clothes. Defeats human logic, but supports divine logic. I absolutely agree. If you're struggling, if you have problems, if you have disconnects and challenges in your life, maybe poverty, maybe sickness, maybe some other disconnects in your life, I just suggest this is a time, connect yourself to Jesus Christ. But the Jesus real Jesus, the Jesus you never knew. The real Jesus has to be connected. What has happened? I want to talk about this our context. Jesus has been made and portrayed a God of conversion. Because many people convert, but that's a wrong picture. He's not a God of conversion, but he's a God of transformation, a real transformation that has to happen internally within us. This call has to happen. He's a God of transformation. He's not a God of conversion. And I personally believe that when a religious activity or a faith based activity turns into an economic activity, it is nothing next to terrorism. It is terrorism. And the same thing has happened in our context, in many different contexts. This faith has been turned into an economic activity. There are multiple triggers and factors at the back of it. I don't want to talk about them. It's open in research articles, discussions, books. But the wrong portrayal, the wrong picture has been made about Jesus Christ. He's not a God of conversion, but he's a God of transformation. But there are some who think that they are contractor of this faith. They have sort of portrayed and made this image of Jesus Christ. So we need to be aware of, but that's a different dimension. But I just want to once again wrap it up and reiterate. See, wrapped him snugly in strips of cloth and led him in a manger. Now angels talking about, and they're not just human beings. This is angels speaking about Jesus Christ, and they're saying this is how you will recognize him. You'll find a baby wrapped snugly in strips of cloth, laying in a manger. This is how you will recognize. We want to know Jesus. We want to know real Jesus. We want to just learn about him. We want to have our connections. We want to relate to him. We want to talk to him. This is how you will. But how to recognize? But the angel saying this is how you will recognize him. You'll find a baby laying in a manger, wrapped snugly in strips of cloth. He's not far above. He's not far in lofty places or in rich palaces. He is laying in a manger, wrapped snugly in strips of cloth, which simply tells me he is absolutely accessible to those who are struggling, those who are poor, and those who have challenges, those who are facing the fury of nature or the realities of life. This is what I just want to tell you. And now I want to tell you that this is something very important. He says, and now this is not angels speaking. This is not humans speaking. This is not some sort of divine speaking. Of course, divine. But this is Jesus speaking this time. And I repeat, this is Jesus speaking. The birth of Jesus Christ. And I want to tell you, Jesus is speaking this time. It's very important for us to understand. This is a different context, but I just want to give it. The Gospel of John, chapter 5. He says, in the verse 8, he says, Jesus told him, stand up, pick up your mat, sleeping mat, and walk. Pick up your sleeping mat and just walk. In this life, we want to walk. We don't want to stand still. We don't want to just lay around, hang around. We want to experience activities, movements, actions. If we want to walk, he doesn't just make load of things at the back and make it very formal, but he just says, stand up, pick up your mat, walk. If you're struggling, you want to walk, stand up, but it has to be the voice of Jesus. And he simply says, stand up. If you're struggling in your faith, stand up, pick up, walk. If you're struggling in your physical dimension, stand up, pick up your mat, walk. Spiritual dimension struggle, stand up, pick up, walk. Today, Christmas, I want to bless you with this Christmas, and I want to give you a call. There are two calls. One is understand the Jesus I never knew. That call has to happen within you. This question has to be constructed in order to know the real Jesus. First, you must know the Jesus I never knew. The question has to be constructed. Then you learn the real Jesus. You will find a baby wrapped snugly in strips of cloth, laying in a manger. And then this thing, if you're struggling in your life, any dimension, spiritual, physical, dimension, economic, or different things, people struggle with. The call is very simple. The action is very simple. The method is very simple. Jesus is stand up, pick up your mat, walk. Stand up, pick up your mat, walk. So these two dimensions, these two person constructions have to happen internally. What I want to tell you, internally. Once again, I just want to wish you a very happy Christmas. Blessings to all of you listening and watching in all possible dimensions of your walk. Thanks a lot listening and watching. This is Dr. Surendra Kumar. Once again, happy Christmas to you.